Hey everyone, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Backlog Banter where we are reviewing every single Best Picture winner, talking about them, giving them a score, and figuring out where they all go on a big giant list of the Best Picture winners ranked. And today, on this week's episode of the Quest for the Bestest, we are talking about the film The Life of Emile Zola from 1937, directed by William Dieterle, starring, well, probably the only actor you might have heard, Paul Muni, maybe, probably not. It's a 1937. He's
a favorite of mine.
Favorite of Abrams, of course. So we're going to hear more about it, and I'm very looking forward to hearing a lot about this film, hopefully, from all of you guys. We'll see. I have literally I have all my thoughts of this film stored in my brain, and I have not an inkling of what anyone else thinks about it.
I have your thoughts stored in my brain, too.
Oh, yes. See, we have to share, Tucker,
Just in
or else
case.
I will forget. We just need a backup. It's for good measure. Before we do all that fun talk about this movie, we got to do a little housekeeping because last week we finished out our two-part series on the longest and the shortest Best Picture winner with Marty from 1955. And we said that Marty got an average score of 6.7, which means it goes at number 55 on the list of the Best Picture winners. So not at the bottom and not at the top, pretty far from either end. So I would say, Marty, got to be pretty happy about sitting there in the middle. We had a lot to say about the film. Well, we had some to say about the film. I would not say we had the most things to say out of any episode in the Quest series. But as always, I recommend going and watching it if you missed out on what was going on. And now I'm going to pass the baton right along past there's no writers, or I can't make a joke that would reference the movie. I'm giving it to Abram for the featured comment. Take it away, man.
Here's the situation, right? We had not a ton to say about Marty, neither did the comments either, because we got one, and it's from Dan, who basically said he'd never watched the movie. Yeah. So I'm going to use this segment here to litigate a personal issue.
Oh,
because
classic.
we did last week get a comment from John Tor, but we didn't get it on Quest for the Bestest. We got it on my show that I do with Andrew Orozco, my Star Wars show, which is a quote-unquote bi-weekly show in which we talk about various Star Wars topics. It's only on YouTube right now. Go check it out if you want. But the point is, John Tor took his comment energy for the week. He took his quota and fulfilled it on my Star Wars show. He said the following. Quote, okay, so you want surprises, Abram? Well, I consider myself a movie buff, but I have to admit I have only watched one Star Wars movie, and I can't even remember the name of it. You know, the one where Harrison Ford dies, ... Spoilers. I'm a big sci-fi fan, so why haven't I seen them? I don't know, ... Do I have to? Now, John Tor, I believe he is our prodigal son. Is this what we've declared on the show in the past? Fifth member of Backlog Banter, prodigal son, John Tor. You're really letting me down here. I don't keep this poster in the background for nothing. I don't have some classic Ralph McQuarrie art on that for nothing. I don't have those pop figures there just because I'm a rube who likes things that are shiny. I'm a rube who loves Star Wars. Look
shiny
at Tanner's
Star Wars
background.
things.
Look at my background.
If there's one thing we all agree on,
I don't have any Star Wars.
if there's one thing we all agree on, we all love Star Wars.
We all love all Star Wars media.
And I implore you, John Tor, do not
die without seeing all these movies.
Do not do that. But here's what I want you to do, John Tor. You have until the end of the year. You can keep commenting on Quest all you like, but just know that every time you leave a Quest comment, this time I know you're not spending watching Star Wars. So if you're going to continue to comment on Quest for the Bestest, you're going to need to show material evidence as to the fact that you're also watching Star Wars.
I think that's fair. I think this is fair.
You got 5 months. Actually, it's about 4 now, so you better get on.
Ticking clock.
Abram, you've
threatened a member of our audience.
You've handed out an ultimatum here that has little to do with the show, but I appreciate the energy.
No.
Oh, it's Quest time, baby.
Now let's talk about a movie that came out 40 years before Star Wars.
Exactly. Actually, thanks for that quick math, Tanner. The Life of Emile Zola. What did you think about this film? What did you think about this dude, Mr. Zola? Who wants to go first and lay down the law or set the record straight with their thoughts?
I'll go first. Why not? Okay. When we popped in the old DVD that we got from the library for The Life of Emile Zola, I was not hooked, to say the least, for the beginning of this movie. But this movie, maybe thankfully, sort of Mr. Magoo's its way and lies to the lies that this movie tells with the title of the film and the poster for the film and the summary of the film is much different than the film that you actually get, I would say. This does not strike me as a film that is about the life of Emile Zola. It seems to be much more concerned with the Dreyfus affair, or the Dreyfus affair. That's what it's called.
Yes.
And that is to the film's benefit. It's great benefit. The life of Emile Zola is the least interesting part of this movie. The most interesting part is, of course, the Dreyfus affair. So that's why I say it sort of Mr. Magoo's its way into becoming a more interesting movie than it sells itself as it sets out to be, mayhaps. But if I were to give my actual take on the film, it's a good movie.
Yeah, I also think this is a good movie. I don't know how long it's going to stick with me, but I was certainly engaged for the vast majority of the runtime while I was watching it. I think that Tanner is right. The Dreyfus Affair is the most interesting aspect of this, and as we start getting into the later parts of the film, that much more focus on the sort of cultural impact that the Dreyfus Affair has, and this sort of theme that I think pervades the entire film of what is the moral role of artists in this kind of society, or the trust that the public has in their government or military. Those are all really interesting themes, and they're reasonably delved into in this film. But I also do think that the life of Emile Zola, as the film is touted as, is not as interesting, but I think supports this Dreyfus affair and frames it in an interesting way, because we have an in to this that is, he's sort of an outsider to this, and we get to see him warm up to the Dreyfus affair and become embroiled in it, and then watch his growth and then his downfall before and after the Dreyfus affair. So I think that both aspects of the film, the Emile Zola aspect and the Dreyfus affair, complement each other very nicely. But I just don't know if this film clicks for me, because I feel like it's a film that requires more knowledge of French history than the American education system provides the average 21st century individual. Because
Or 20th century
I
too,
was
probably.
struggling. Sure, 20th and 21st century individual. I was struggling to, okay, what war are they? What war are they going to fight? Like, what rules are in place in France at this time? I don't know the politics of modern day France, let alone 1800s France. So I, from that perspective, don't think it does a great job at onboarding the viewer. But once I was in it, I was like, okay, I can enjoy the courtroom drama aspect of it, and I did to as much as that's worth.
Abram, what do you think?
Yeah, I like this movie a lot, actually. But you sit me down in front of a movie that's under 2 hours long, that's about like the power of rhetoric and the written word. I mean,
is
like, I'm in.
It's,
You know what I mean?
1900 Spotlight. It was Spotlight almost 100 years before Spotlight.
Yeah, but that's a better movie than Spotlight. Yeah.
I'll let that one slide. That you get one.
Sure.
You get one, Abram. You get one, and I'll let that one
Sure.
slide.
It
Just
sounds like
you
your
let something
phone
slide
just fell
your
off the
desk.
table.
Yeah, I let my phone slide out of my pocket, off of my chair, onto the hard floor. But that's a problem to litigate in 45 minutes. No, I was surprisingly engaged by this film, and for me, I think maybe because the sort of narrative is a little bit more resonant and interesting, just given my line of work as a writer. I found watching Emile Zola sort of rise to be quite compelling, and then when we transitioned to the Dreyfus Affair stuff, I like how we're situated, and I think that it brings us into some interesting moments, such as the idea of Emile Zola making his proclamations in the paper and that segueing into the courtroom. I think that's quite compelling. I feel like maybe the film doesn't quite know what is worth showing, what isn't at times. You know, I think by making the film about the Dreyfus Affair, sure, Tanner, in your perspective, I think quite fairly, it makes the film more interesting. But from my perspective, it feels like it's a little bit unfocused.
I agree.
Like we're just all of us, we're throwing all these characters in here. We're tackling a incredibly important thing in French history. Now, I studied the Dreyfus Affair very briefly in AP European history, but frankly, I've forgotten literally all of that.
Here's
So,
a crash course.
I have to say, yeah. Well, to be fair, I don't think the film is that complicated, because basically it boils down to guy was wrongly convicted.
Yeah.
Military wants
the Dreyfus
wants
Affair
to cover
aspect
it up.
of it,
Right.
very simple. But I think the framing
Right.
of French history and just expecting that you know
Sure.
aspects of it, which I do not at all.
No, that is fair. I just think that what I'm kind of driving at is that it ultimately doesn't really matter.
Sure.
You get the same level of enjoyment whether you know it or not, and I think that kind of signals to me the film. It wants to be about this period in history. It wants to be about this man's life, but instead it just sort of intermingles, and both
Yeah.
end up being good and fun, but kind of feel like we're missing a little bit from every facet of the movie.
Sure.
Mhm. Well, I was very pleasantly surprised by this movie. We get that spin wheel and it's like, "Oh boy, here we're going in the 1930s." But there are other films from this time period that are also turned out to be pretty good. And thinking about
Yeah.
All Quiet on the Western Front's only 7 years earlier, and I found myself very early on very, like, grabbed in. This story of this guy who, to me, Emile Zola is one based MFer. This guy really knows what's worth writing about. And so I'm like, okay, I like this character. I like this character from the beginning, and we see him writing stuff. And I think that the way the character dynamics and stuff brings me into the film. And then we build up to this Dreyfus affair narrative, which, while I didn't know what was going on, I didn't know the context for this. I found it understandable enough that was going on. And I basically was like Abram said, dude is wrongly accused. Writer who has written exposés and truth seeing books in the past just can't not write about it. And to
Yeah.
me, that is like, it scratches like a similar itch, even though I'm not a writer to what Abram was talking about. I found that to be this film to just be like really gratifying and just it basically showed me everything that I want from a narrative like this, even when that means that it doesn't question a whole lot of stuff. It leaves out important things from the Dreyfus affair. I think it's pretty damn convenient. I still enjoyed the film a lot and found myself just allowing myself to be pulled along by it and see where it was going and what was happening. And I really like this Emile Zola character. I think he's a cool dude, and I've
Yeah.
found it fun to watch his life and see it play out. And I've got reasons why all of this, but I'll let Tanner speak first, and then we can dive in.
Yeah, I mean, I liked. Yeah, I opened up saying, like, oh, I wasn't too concerned, I wasn't too grabbed by the life of Emile Zola that we opened this film with. But Paul Muni's does a very good job. I think he delivers a very powerful monologue at one point. During the Dreyfus affair sort of trial. If we wanted to open up with some
Not
early
the Dreyfus. We're
trivia,
not allowed to reference that.
No,
Don't.
no,
You
no,
can't.
no.
It's not. It wasn't the Dreyfus affair trial. It was his trial. We were not allowed to reference the Dreyfus affair.
That case is
Oh,
closed.
affair
You're
is closed.
unable to
Sorry.
reopen it, Tanner.
My mistake. But so nonetheless, the monologue that Paul Muni gives in that trial, I have a little bit of trivia here to open it up with. Paul Muni's finest moment of the film is when he's the 6 minute courtroom speech. It didn't feel like 6 minutes when I was watching it because it's just a very powerfully delivered monologue. He had to do multiple takes of this because it is a crucial scene, and upon its completion, he received a standing ovation from the cast and crew. So that's they recognized it in the time as well, and I think that Emile Zola is an interesting character to place in the Dreyfus affair. Sorry, I know we're not supposed to talk about that, but
As it happens in the
can't,
movie, it's a bit
this
unavoidable.
yes, this character this writer who speaks truth to power and challenges the elite, the government, the status quo, and things of that nature, the military. He's a good character, and as he was in real history, to be sort of inserted into this situation. But I don't know if I find him that compelling outside of it. I mean, sure, he resonates, he represents these themes of, like I said, speaking truth to power. But then we go on to these things of things I just personally disagree with, which is like artists should be poor or whatever, otherwise they can't they can't speak truthfully, and they have to reject all these accolades and stuff like that.
Mm.
Which, to a certain point, I can understand that, becoming ingratiated in the system, becoming, because he was going to become like part of this whatever group that he got accepted into that he tore up the letter
Yeah,
for.
the high French class, whatever. They're like, hey,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
invited to be an actual big guy.
Yeah, I can understand him rejecting that, but I think the larger sort of message is about that Paul tells him, his friend Paul, like, you should, you've grown fat and you've grown wealthy in this big house, and that
Paul,
makes you a bad writer, and you should be, good writers and good artists are poor.
that's
I
Cezanne, by the way, the famous French painter who has painted many world famous paintings. Not
nah,
really, but
whatever, who cares?
display.
I think that's an interesting point, Tanner. And his character I do find to be annoying, the Cezanne character, right? I mean, I go to a small liberal arts college.
Mhm.
I have certainly trafficked in circles with people who feel similarly, right? And I think it's as annoying in real life as it is in the film. Nonetheless, I do think that what he kind of forced, the revelation he forced out of Emile Zola is interesting. So I think that Emile Zola is a little bit more of a nuanced approach to that philosophy,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
What I appreciate about his character is sort of watching his rise through the social strata to becoming a man of high class. And there's a lot of great moments where we sort of see this sort of idea of you have to be poor to be a writer, or there's sort of like like a glorification of the
Mhm.
poverty in moments that I think are kind of telling and interesting, like when he's going to hopefully get that advance on his first book, Nana, and there's the umbrella salesman, and he's like, "Hey, you want to buy an umbrella?" He's like, I give up the opportunity to argue with my old friend, right? You know, kind of this humorous line, but as soon as he's got the money, he's out the fucking door with a new umbrella,
Mhm.
right? I like this sort of arc we follow as he feels this tension imposed on him by other people, or just as a general like thematic vehicle. This tension of I am becoming more successful. I'm a man of means now, and kind of a refrain of his is, I want to live comfortably. I'm done fighting these battles or whatever, right? And I think that's a fair counterpoint to Paul. But what I think the film settles on, for the most part, which find compelling, is like, yeah, you don't need to struggle, but you also need to stay connected
Yeah.
to sort of the social realities, right? And I like watching Emile take that path and arrive at the sense of duty that he feels, which then connects back into the power of rhetoric and the written word, which speaks to
Yeah.
me, right? But that character arc I find to be quite compelling, and it doesn't beat you over the head with it,
Mhm.
really. I think the film beats you over the head at different points,
Mm.
as we'll talk about, like the end of the film. But I think that worked for me in his relationships he had with other people.
Sure.
Yeah.
I quite like that turning point. There's a because to me the film is set up in our two halves. I'm not really sure if it's runtime wise divided into halves like this, but the first half, which is in my mind is in like smaller episodes. We have like 2 episodes in the first half, and which is about an hour, and then we have the Dreyfus affair in the second half, which is the second half, the second hour of the film. And that turning point in the middle, in which he initially rejects the case, but is given the evidence, the papers, which I don't really know why they didn't bring those up in the trial. Whatever.
I think
It
they
seems like a
tried to,
miss.
but we're
They
not
wouldn't
allowed
let
to.
him.
Yeah,
Who
that
knows?
was a
Mhm.
pretty big part of that. Yeah.
Well, that point, his characterization in the previous half of the film had led it to where I know I'm like, even though he is comfortable, he doesn't have to take this. He because of all these other and very important things that he's written and his just general outlook on how his work and his writing affects society, he can't not take the case.
Yeah.
He has to
Mhm.
because what I think Abram is saying and what the film is trying to say is that there even when you have to live a scrappy lifestyle to get started, and but after you're comfortable there are some things that are just too big to ignore, and that
Mm.
ignoring them would be doing the wrong thing. And that's what in that moment Emil takes he's like, well, in my mind he's like, oh, the papers, I just got to read them, I got to see what's in them, and then he's compelled to write the book. I know, knowing how my creative brain works, that's how it happened to me too.
I would have done the exact same thing in this situation. Trust me, bro. No, but
Trust
I
me,
I
bro.
think you guys all make great points. I think that where it becomes even more interesting to me is how this intersects with the themes of morality and justice and, as I said earlier, trust in the government and military and justice system. Because there's an interesting growth from starting with Paul Muni's character, Emile Zola, who is a struggling artist, but he's struggling because the only thing he wants to do is write truth. And he refuses to let that go by the wayside, and he will live in poverty, whatever it takes, and write these books and get kicked out of shops and be put on ban lists and all these things that brings up interesting questions, especially back in this time. And again, I don't know that much about French history. Frankly, I don't know almost anything about pre 1900s history. Let's just clear the air right here.
Mhm.
But this idea of what the role of authors were, especially in this time, being the only ones who were able to widespread communicate themes and topics that were subverting the current government political system and criticizing different social structures. Like those were parts of the film that I found most interesting outside of the courtroom aspect of it. But I think they all connect very interesting ways because you see Emile Zola become this figurehead of truth for France. But then you have the government putting their version of truth for France and what is best for the country. And that sort of morality play, I think, makes his character a lot more interesting when he gets involved in a situation that is actually like large scale important for politics of France and where the people put their trust. He suddenly gains this position where everyone's like, no, you're going against France. That's bad. But then his powerful speech, I think, brings us all to a head is him saying, no, actually, this is what's best for France. And the belief that you have been and trust you've been putting in the government is misplaced. And this is why. And so, like, it's all those themes sort of coming to bubble and intermingling that makes them also engaging to me.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me want to actually bring into conversation another film we watched recently that we weren't too impressed by, and that was Driving Miss Daisy. Because I think you can make sort of a thematic parallel here to where everything you're saying is right, Tucker, but I think there's like an even higher, more nebulous thematic reading,
Sure.
which is basically just like the danger of apathy. And I think that's sort of, you can draw into conversation with Driving Miss Daisy there in the sense of, we see those moments when Emile Zola is in like the market and he's like, I know everything about how to find the right lobster, right? And it's all about, and we can buy nice lobster, have this great dinner, have the people over, right? And we have a big social event. At that same time, we see his wife talking with like the fishmonger or whatever about the Dreyfus affair and like brushing off, like, oh, they say he's guilty, it's fine, whatever, move on, right? And this sort of arc in what he's talking about to the jury, because he's got this interesting line about to the jury, like, you don't want to do something that's going to make history reflect poorly on you or whatever, right? I think again it goes back to this idea of like apathy is dangerous in a society like this. So and it just I found this to be a better vector for that.
Well, absolutely,
message.
because it actually delves into that, and that like plays a pivotal role in our main characters and in overall, France's outcome. Because we are able to see him change in a way that Driving Miss Daisy sort of steered away from, pun intended. It is that none of the characters there, they were all apathetic, and then it ended, and they were largely still apathetic. But watching that, I think Timo used the word gratifying. That's very true for watching him sort of come to terms with that he has this influence and he can do something about it, and then writing that article, and you're watching all the copies be pumped out, and it's going around the country, and everyone's suddenly mad, and they're burning effigies of him. Yeah,
Exactly.
I thought that was a powerful and gratifying moment.
Yeah.
Well, J'accuse being the real life title of the real life article, I think using they simply just translated it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of, I was looking up just like the real life events that happened. Pretty much everything that happened in the movie happened in real life, with the movie had some
Caveats.
exceptions. Yeah.
Yeah.
For its time. Tanner, as you were.
I was going to mention, I guess, Abram brought up earlier the lack of focus that this movie has, which I think is an issue as well, because I just feel like there is this sort of like disconnect between like the two halves of this movie, which are a biography, a biopic of Emile Zola, which it seems like it's going to do for the first half and is largely uninteresting. And maybe the film even seems largely uninterested in doing, but feels it needs to establish him as a character. It obviously establishes some themes, like you guys said, but I feel like we just spend too much time. We spend a solid 40 minutes on stuff that's just not that compelling, and it falls into this like very common biopic trap of like every scene to me just feels like we're hitting bullet points on a Wikipedia page. It's like he was poor, and then he got a job, and then he wanted to write a book, and then he got fired, and then he wrote the book anyway, and then he met this woman, and that's who he wrote the book about, and that's how he got famous, and da 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 da. And we're going down the checklist, and then we hit the time for the Dreyfus affair, and that's where the film gets interesting. Ultimately, I just feel like the film should have been about the Dreyfus affair. Make Emile Zola the core figure of this thing. Make him, make him. I drew a comparison in this while watching the movie to the trial of the Chicago 7. Make him the Abby Hoffman, the Sacha Baron Cohen of this whole thing. He is a primary player, but the film is ultimately about the court case, about the Dreyfus affair. I feel like that would have just made for a more compelling film. Also because we we skip over he writes this initial book, and then we time jump, and then he's famous. He's immediately famous, and he's big and fat, and he's sitting in his opulent house, and Paul's talking to him and stuff like that. I think if we were going to talk about and establish themes of like how fame can corrupt an artist and make them not speak truth to power and make them sort of ingratiated in the elite system, we should have maybe seen that happen. But of course, the film is more interested in the depiction of the Dreyfus affair, which I think we should probably talk about in a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
I do want to throw this in here. I don't know if you have this in trivia, 10 or not, but 1937, we got to think about the timeline here in Hollywood. So we have the very, very beginning of the production code, and there is a key fact about the real life Dreyfus affair that was largely left out of the movie, left out except for one word on a piece of
I know
paper.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
Dreyfus was a Jew, and that's
Yes.
largely why he was kicked out of the army. That's why he was put on the island. The film You got trivia? Go for it.
I got some trivia. I got a specific entry about this. Studio boss Jack L. Warner, who was himself Jewish, personally ordered that the word Jew be removed from all dialogue in the movie about Alfred Dreyfus, apparently in order to make the drama more universal and not offend the Nazi regime, and thus hurt business for the film in Germany. However, the word does appear on screen in a single shot. The fact that he is Jewish is brought up one time. It's on the piece of paper next to religion. It says Jew. It's on the screen for a second or two, and that's it.
Yeah, and so the film completely ignores this large aspect of this real life trial and the real life person, and shouldn't have done that probably. But hey, they were trying to appease the Nazis, so
yeah,
which is by our standards never a good thing, I would say.
Yeah,
let's all agree on that one. Shake hands right in the middle.
Yep.
Tanner didn't shake hands.
Sorry.
But about the Dreyfus affair.
Yeah.
I would like to. I want to rewind just a second to what Tanner said before, because Tanner said very many good things there, mostly because I agree with them.
Thank you.
When you're raising the point about it feeling like we're going bullet point by bullet point, and I think this actually ties into some of the issues I have with the Dreyfus affair. We can transition that way. It's like I agree with you. It goes back to what are we showing? Why aren't we showing X, and why are we showing Y? I think those early moments with the Nana storyline being so important to how he becomes famous, we do see it in a very circumspect way, and it is and now we cut, and he's in the mansion, and he's got a lot more hair, and he's kind of rounder, and he's making a lot of money.
Doing this face a lot.
We basically just he's doing that face a lot, and I think that this issue of having more ground to cover than we have screen time feeds into the Dreyfus affair in the sense of my major problem with these two halves feeling disconnected is like there are a shit ton of people that you need to know to understand the Dreyfus affair. And I'm not even saying to understand it politically, historically, just to understand the players in the game. We spend very little time with Dreyfus himself. We spend even less time with his wife, who really is the driving force behind involving Emile Zola and everything. There are just more players than there are places on a chessboard, and I think that's kind of the problem ultimately. But I think it speaks to, for me, why this movie isn't fantastic, but it's still quite good, is that it feels like, despite perhaps the troubling elements of what they omit, or just the more audience level, it feels like we're missing something here, components. That I feel like the Dreyfus affair ultimately is just a vehicle to explain a lesson that Emile Zola learned. And ultimately, I don't even think the movie's about Emile Zola. I really do think, especially when we get to the end of the film and he dies randomly of monoxide poisoning, right? And we end the film with basically saying, and here is what his life was about, and here is what the movie is about. It feels like this film largely is more concerned with sort of the audience being motivated than it is about telling the life or the event with any major level of detail.
Yeah, that's the first aspect that I found myself considering when watching this film, is that we have watched a number of biopics for not only this show, but the nominees for the past few years, and knowing just how the Oscars work, there's been a lot of biopics, as those are the films that ultimately end up getting a lot of the performance awards and the large-scale nomination awards. But I found this movie to be interesting because I was so disconnected from any actual historical context of this scenario. I'd never heard of Emile Zola before. I'd never heard of the Dreyfus Affair. I knew nothing, as I've said multiple times, about pre-1900s history, but especially French pre-1900s history. That this just kind of felt like, to me, it felt like a fictional story. It could have easily been a fictional court case story about a guy, a struggling artist who gets famous and caught up in this political affair. And from that angle, I never felt like I was really missing too much, because I think I picked up from the beginning that of what Abram said is this film is largely concerned with being for the audience to get a message. And that's what this movie communicated most to me. I don't feel like I got to know Emile Zola intimately, and like all of his fears and his dreams and stuff like that. Of course, very much about his dreams at the beginning, but this was never about like the psychology behind that, or why he's super into this writing morality and speaking truth to power and things like that. But I, because I felt disconnected from it, the only problem I had with the pacing was that it jumps around so much time wise. And I have a problem with that often in movies in general. But because this film covers so much time, but so little time, so many of the times, but then covers a huge amount of time, like three-quarters of the way through the film, it feels really disjointed about where the focus is going. But again, as I was saying, that didn't really draw too much power away from it for me, because I was watching it to get to the message and not for Emile Zola's like personal growth necessarily, or his story. Just sort of the general concept of politics and what the government is hiding and allowing and things like that, which are absolutely, at least in my eyes, the most powerful aspects of the film, especially when you get to the Dreyfus Affair. And it is quite shockingly similar to Trial of the Chicago 7, where they are just not allowing certain things, and the government and the justice system are picking away at and convincing people of certain things. There's a lot of interesting like political secrecy going on here that I really enjoyed.
I think the
Um,
film
oh,
really does turn up the heat in The Dreyfus Affair, even though it's a courtroom drama. I
Yeah.
always find it exciting to see how films can take the otherwise not interesting, what happens in court most days is a lot of people are bored most days,
Yeah.
and like people's lives are ruined and saved,
Hmm.
while other people cannot bear to pay attention. I think
Go
that
watch Inherit the Wind. Great movie.
true.
I
Great
think
movie.
that the courtroom scenes in this film, combined with seeing what really happened beforehand,
Hmm.
allows us to really just wrenches at your heart, because you're like, oh my god, what are they doing? Oh my god, they're not letting the people who need to speak.
Yeah.
Um, and I like that method of doing this second part of the film, which is quite different from the first, but this courtroom, political intrigue story.
I kind of find myself becoming a bit of two minds about the Dreyfus Affair stuff, because I think it's good. I think it is a very clear, very we're drawing the line. It is black and white, just much like the film is, about the morally right thing, the truth and the justice that needs to take place, and the stifling nature, that the tyrannical stifling nature and grip that the French government and particularly the military has on the truth coming out, the truth about Dreyfus and Esterhazy, the guy who actually was the German spy, and not wanting to admit wrong, like that is the French military's whole thing, is like, the military doesn't make mistakes. We know we fucked up, but we're not going to admit it, and that is the truth because we established it to be so. And I think that there is something to painting that picture so blatantly, so black and white. But at the same time, I kind of feel like, just for my own personal interest, we're lacking a bit of nuance in the court in those scenes. Like, I think back to the trial of the Chicago 7, which of course there is, of course, a morally good and a morally bad position in that court case. And Aaron Sorkin largely sort of, he whitewashes the nuances of it, but the nuances are still there if you can sort of dig past Aaron Sorkin's neoliberal sort of attitudes that he takes in that film. But I feel like some those same sort of nuances were missing in the life of Emile Zola in the Dreyfus Affair scenes, and I don't know, like we spend quite a bit of time in the Dreyfus Affair, in the court scenes and stuff like that. Maybe a bit too much time for how cut and dry the whole thing is. And again, I do like, seeing Dreyfus and whoever the like justice is, or the lawyer or whatever that guy is, who's down there like fighting on his side. That is some good stuff that we see. But yeah, I feel like I keep drawing comparisons to Trial of Chicago 7. I feel like we were missing a bit of the trying to jerk around the system a little bit, like find little loopholes and things like that. I guess I find myself a little bit lacking in that for personal interest's sake.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it just comes back to what I was saying before, that the film clearly doesn't seem interested in depicting that, right? Because when I think about the strengths of this film, I do think of the script, maybe not on a larger constructional level, but certainly the dialogue is quite compelling. And I think it does reach a point of maximum interest in that courtroom, right? And I know that the film could be what you want it to be,
Mhm.
right? And there's probably a more interesting version of this movie that does. But they really, again, they seem content in that becoming a vehicle for moments like the monologue that you're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
And to that effect, I do think it's effective in getting me in and out pretty effectively.
Yeah.
It is, okay, at a high level, I know what the Dreyfus Affair is, right? The film is not interested in going any lower. So I'm taking that for what it is. So then instead, I'm being compelled by the moment to moment. Big judge says, you can't permit that. You can't permit
Mhm.
that. And the crowd is roaring, right? And then it all kind of fades away to let, our lead deliver a monologue. And I think for the function that this wants to serve in the film, a sort of character growth moment, really treating the Dreyfus Affair as a moment in the life. Again, this film is not called The Dreyfus Affair: Emile Zola did something here,
Mhm.
right?
That's a bad
It wouldn't
title
have been. It would have
anyway.
been a marketable. It wouldn't have been marketable,
Yeah.
right? But I think it comes down to the framing of
Sure.
this. It comes down to it being framed as a chapter in his life, and for the probably necessary omissions to that point. Now, it doesn't smooth out my issues with the number of characters I feel like are just on a carousel coming in and out of
Mhm.
this, but I think it at least contextualizes for me a little bit like what the intent is. So
Yeah.
I like it fine, I guess,
It's
because it gets its good
Yeah,
moments.
it
I
serves the
also like it
purpose.
fine. Yeah.
When I was watching it, I was like, this is kind of like journalism porn. Basically, the journalists unequivocally win
I'm sure
and
you can
use.
find that online, Timo. You don't need to watch Best Picture winners for that.
This
Mhm.
is a kind of movie where the journalists do the right thing. They seek out the truth and the facts, and they get what's right as a result of it through some struggle. I mean, there's not this film succeeds in its stakes. The stakes are certainly high enough to make me care. Those scenes of Dreyfus screaming, I am innocent," over and over and over again are powerful, and they really, when I watched them, they really tugged at me and made me care a lot more that everything is that they succeed in the court case, that he is freed.
Yeah, I think that's because it balances really well the stakes of the one man that we're trying to save, of Alfred Dreyfus, and the consequences of if this doesn't succeed, what does this mean for what track record does this set? This is a bad example to set
Mhm.
for the country of France and where trust is placed going forward. But I think that what I was surprised about, and I kind of wish that they had delved a little more into Dreyfus himself and making us
Mhm.
care even more than just seeing a guy scream more about him personally. We didn't get a lot about him personally, but it was in those scenes that we were seeing him being tortured and being led away and psychologically just absolutely terrified of those moments that are some of the more human moments of the film. And in a film that largely is concerned with the highfalutin moral artistry and the large level of politics of things, watching Dreyfus walk out of the jail cell when they literally just like, oh shit, lol, you're free,
Yeah.
whatever. And he
Yeah. Yeah.
walks out and Tanner pointed this out. He
Mhm.
raises his hands because he's been so
Like
trained
muscle
to
memory.
be
Yeah.
cuffed. Exactly. And then he walks back and forth from a jail cell a few times because he's like, is this real? And his mind has been so degraded that he can't comprehend the situation that's going on. And I really wish there was better payoff after that, where we
Mhm.
saw him return and saw how people were more reacting to the fact that this was wrong, he was wrongly accused, and get more scenes of him with Emile Zola. Like I think there could have been absolutely a lot better handling of that outcome. But when we're in those really emotional moments with him, I think they're fantastic. I just think they could have been supported better on either side with the income and the outcome.
Yeah.
I think on the outcome, I will say it is kind of a bittersweet emotional beat that Zola doesn't get to meet him, because he
Sure,
does
it's a good
say
point.
there is that character arc where he's like, "Oh, I've done all these things, I've written all this stuff that has caused such impact, but like this this beats all of those out by so much. I have caused such a direct impact to one person's life. I want to meet them. I want to see his face when he is free here in Paris." And he doesn't get that. And I think that the film, even though it's because he dies, it is called The Life of Emile Zola. And as we got towards the end of the film's
Mhm.
runtime, I was like, he's got to die sometime here, or else it wouldn't have been called The Life of Emile Zola.
Sure. Most
I-
of the life of Emile
most
Zola.
of his life.
I got that same sort of feeling because I googled Emile Zola just to see what his deal was before we started the movie. I'm like, he died in 1902, and then a lot of the film we're spending in like 1897, 1898. I'm like, oh boy, clock's ticking, Emile. You better.
You better say what you have to say quick before you kick it.
Exactly. We talked a little bit about Alfred Dreyfus, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to mention that Joseph Schildkraut did win Best Supporting Actor for his role. I'll do the other
Very
ones.
surprisingly minor role.
Yeah,
Not in terms of
exactly.
importance, but in terms of screen time.
I know.
Mhm.
That surprised me as well. This film obviously won Best Picture. It also won Best Screenplay. I did a bit of an investigation about this because apparently, I don't know. The Academy, I always go back to this thing of people before like 1970-ish were all stupid, and that includes the Academy. Because this film was apparently nominated for both Best Original and Best Adapted Screenplay.
There's
Uh,
weird
it-
flukes.
there is weird
Yeah.
flukes. It won Best Screenplay or Best Original Story, as the award was called,
Sure.
and it was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. So who's to say? What are they doing back there?
I was actually I imagine that must be, and I don't know if you're curious about
Mhm.
this, because some of the speeches Emile Zola gives are speeches he actually gave.
Okay.
That have just been
Like,
translated.
is his thing in the courtroom, like, is the thing in the courtroom something he actually
What
orated? Because in that case, that could be, I don't
in
know.
the
But also, were they keeping good enough
yes.
notes then? I don't think
in
so.
the best
They didn't even have
original
paper
screen
back then.
Oh yeah, in the best adapted screenplay category, it did list like based on this book, like an autobiography of Emile Zola.
Sure.
So I don't know,
Interesting.
but anyway, the rest of the nominees: Paul Muni was nominated for best leading actor, best William. How do you pronounce it? Or Tima, how'd you say
Timo
the
said
director's name?
Dieterle.
Yeah,
Dieterle. Sure, why not?
Dieterle.
William
Weiler?
William
No.
Dieterle was nominated for
Yeah.
Best Director. It was
Dieterle.
nominated for Best Art Direction, Best Sound Recording, Best Assistant Director, and Best Music.
Huh.
Yeah,
That's a category I've never heard of before.
The best
Academy
assistant
Awards
director.
were quite weird back then.
1930s Academy.
This is why I
Bring
love the
back
history of
best
of the
assistant
Oscars.
director. Bring back that
Mm.
award. I want that award back. I want to be the ones voting on that too, because when I work on set, I have strong opinions about the AD, who's usually my boss. That's like the
Sure.
best boss award for everyone else on set.
Sure.
Okay,
Let's
but
see.
so it only won Best Picture
Three.
and this funky. Okay,
It
Best Picture,
won,
screenplay, and
supporting actor.
ah,
It
Oh,
was
yes,
also, by the way, the first film ever at the Academy Awards to hit double-digit nominations.
Oh.
oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
okay.
First one to
Good for
get
them.
10 or more nominations. I think it did get 10 nominations.
Wow.
Yes.
And yet no dang. So do you know who won Best Actor in 1937? Because I'm just
Oh,
thinking
I
about
looked it up. Hang
Paul
on.
Muni's performance, and I'm like, man, because not only is there the scene in the courtroom where he's really giving the speech, but there's also when he's reading aloud, J'accuse. That scene is also really good, and I think there's also a lot of other moments throughout the film in which he really shines through as an actor and carries the weight of Monsieur Zola as an
Spencer
actor.
Tracy won Best Actor for Captains Courageous. Oh, so there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Oh, everyone loves it. Everyone knows it. Everyone loves
Don't
it.
lie. Oh wow, this is a stacked movie. Spencer Tracy, Lionel Barrymore, Melvin Douglas, Mickey Rooney, and John Carradine.
How about
Okay.
that?
Sheesh.
I have a few other
Directed
bits
by
of
Victor
trivia.
Fleming
Oh,
of Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind fame.
hey, we know that guy.
We know
I have
that
a few
guy.
other bits of trivia. But does anyone else have anything else to say about the life of Emile Zola?
I do have a. Well, should we have a little fun? Should a little fun right now? I've got a little something prepared for us.
Timo's
You
fun
guys-
segment.
Do you remember in sort of the early part of the film, there is we actually talked about earlier, the part in which he sold Nana. Nana is a great success, and now we are going to time skip forward, and he is going to be famous. And how does I particularly like how the film does this transition with our book covers and the way that each book piles on top of the next, and you get to read all the titles. So I'm going to ask you some questions about. I'm going to give you some titles of books that Emile Zola may or may not have written.
This is a great idea.
And you are going to have to tell me whether it's real or fake Emile Zola book titles. Let's start out with one, and you're either just going to have to remember or know, okay? Are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Laundress.
That's
Londres.
That's not real.
I'm going to say it's not real, but maybe you're... Because that's...
Real.
No, hang on, Timo. Were all of these are ones that are these books that Emile Zola wrote, the real ones, or are they only the ones that were in that little time skip thing?
There are some that are in the time skip thing, and I'm not referencing anyone that he. If it is real, it's not from the other canon. It's not from the stuff that he wrote that we didn't.
Okay, so the real ones are only going to be ones from the time skip thing.
And
yes.
Okay.
And you said laundress? What the heck is that?
The laundress.
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 Real.
I'm gonna say fake.
Tanner, you're right. It is fake. I made that one up. He had one very closely named Lordress, which is Londres being how French people say London, and then the book title was the name of some French city that sounded similar.
That's not what the name of the city is. It's London, silly French people.
Up next. Discussions with students.
That is real.
That's real. I think that's real.
I'm just fake, just to spite people.
Tucker, you're wrong. Discussions with students did show up there. I couldn't actually find a translation. Like, all the translations for all these book titles are not the same as how they are translated in English.
Interesting.
Awesome.
How about The Painter?
Ooh.
I'm going fake again.
Fake.
Try to go 0 for 0 here.
I'm going to go real.
Well, Tucker, I'm sorry. You're not going 0 for 0. That one is fake. I did make that one up.
Shit.
Okay. We got two more. Human Beast.
That one's real.
Abram?
That one's real.
Human Beast. I just love that title so much.
Weird ass titles in there.
I know. Okay.
I really want to know what some of these books are actually about, because the funny thing of watching that stack of books pile up is, it starts on a couple things that are like sort of large scale things about society.
I wrote them all down. I'm not going
specific ones that are like, I don't even know how you could spin this off and get this from something that's about morality or society.
Yeah,
Timo hit it
like Ladies Paradise, a real one, or Piping Hot. I know that
Piping
one.
Hot. That's right.
Piping Hot one. Okay, that's great. The final one. I'm deciding right now if I'm going to pick from the real or the fake list. I just have a list of two of them, and I'm picking in the moment. The final one is Island of Despair.
Ooh, that's
fake.
I'm gonna go real. I think that was a real one. I think.
I'm the tiebreaker here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Island of Despair is fake.
Okay. Well, Abram and Tucker, you are right. That one is fake. I made that one up.
Damn it.
I wasn't keeping score, but it seems like all of you got about like 2 out of 5. That's what I'm going to say. Everyone gets 2 out of 5.
Dan's, Seth, whoever it is, leave our scores in the comments below.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for playing Real or Fake, Emile Zola.
Thank you.
That was a lot of fun.
The game of Emile Zola.
The game of life of Emile Zola. All right, I got a few last pieces of trivia here. They'll fly by. You won't even notice. Everyone set your watches. Considered highly
that was quick.
Considered highly contentious in France, the film wasn't granted a proper release until 1952.
Whoa.
Yeah. The film was actually shot in reverse order. Paul Muni grew his beard out for the role. Yeah, exactly. He grew his beard out for the role, and they trimmed it and darkened it as they shot films in reverse sequence to where Zola is younger.
That does make me want to think that it makes me notice that Muni does play a wide range of ages, and the hair and makeup is convincing enough for
Yep.
black and white
it is.
cinematography.
Yeah, his makeup took 3.5 hours to apply each morning. And finally, a little bit of tying into the makeup thing, and a little bit in a bit of a applause to Paul Muni for dedication to the role here. Paul Muni read all of Emile Zola's work, so he read the Laundress or whatever it was called, and Money
Lordress.
was one of those. The Human Beast. He
He
researched
read
the
Human
Dreyfus
Beast.
Affair. Yeah, he read Human Beast.
We should go ask him what it's about.
No, he's dead. He researched the Dreyfus Affair and experimented with several different types of makeup with the lead makeup artist Park Westmore. So very dedicated to the role.
Yeah.
But Paul Muni was. But that
Seems it paid
is
off.
all she wrote.
That's
Wow.
what you wrote.
That's
all
all
I
Tanner
wrote.
wrote about the trivia.
Mhm.
Well, any final thoughts?
Not
I,
the moment, no.
I have.
My final.
Go ahead, Abram. Go ahead, because I have a final thought.
No, you should go.
Okay.
first.
Well, mine is that while this film does feel like it was made in the 1930s, and the way it opens did not, I felt I was not putting me in a hopeful in terms of technical achievement of this film. I think that by the time that I got to the end, it had really just drew me in, and I just really didn't care that it looked like it was from the 1930s, and none of that mattered. And
There's
that
a
we
few cool
do
shots
get
in here, actually.
and we get a lot of nice shots. The one where Muni delivers that amazing didactic speech in the courtroom, in which he's staring down I was like, he's staring down the camera like the whole time. It's like this
Looking down the
big
barrel,
rotate,
yeah.
and he's like, he's not looking in the courtroom. He's looking in the theater. He's looking at the seats of the people who are watching the
Yeah.
film.
I also like the
I
one
quite
with
like
like the
that.
wide of all the people with umbrellas like crowded in the street waiting for the court decision.
great shot.
I was like, oh, we got to find evidence if this movie came up with that shot or if it ripped off some previous movie, because I've seen that shot being ripped off since this movie's come out many times.
I see.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the nomination for best sound recording was good. I heard every line, sounded
Yeah,
good.
very true. Very true. Abram Bueller.
That's my only bar.
I was just gonna say that I still prefer Emile from Halo Reach over Emile Zola. That's all I had to
Let's
add.
give this film a score, should we?
Let's do that. Let's do
Okay,
that.
all right.
How about let's do that?
I got my score.
What am I gonna?
Yeah, my score. It's not a competition.
Okay, well, I got it in first, so it doesn't really matter.
No, I've had mine in for several minutes, Henry. You know that. You know you're lying.
Okay.
We're
Right.
waiting on Tanner to enter into his
you
score.
forged the proverbial
I
document.
type it right as you say
The
go.
Boudreaux-
So
how did you
it's
say-
instantaneous.
Oh, it's
The
the
boardroom.
the bordereau.
bordereau. Yeah.
Hmm.
God help us when the Quest bordereau comes out.
Oh God.
Okay, let's figure out
Don't
what we give
incriminate
this
us.
score in 3, 2, 1, go.
Ooh, nice and tight.
Whoa, very
Ooh,
Tucker's
very
exactly
nice.
right. It is a nice and tight score. It's a 7.5 for this film, exactly 75% of the way through the scale. The point breakdown, starting at the bottom, Tanner gave it a 7, Tucker gave it a 7.3, and then Abraham and I both gave it a 7.9. So we're all actually pretty dang close in our assessment of the life of Emile Zola. 7.5. We've got some
Uh-oh.
tie breaking to do. We got to
Yes.
decide between two other movies. This might be a little tough. It's Platoon and then Gandhi are the two movies that have scored a similar or an exact same score. What do we
Right.
have to do?
We're going biopic for biopic.
Yeah, well, first,
True.
biopic for biopic. Do we think
Super
the life of
biopic.
Emile Zola goes above or below Gandhi?
I would put it above Gandhi.
Above.
Hello.
I would put it
Timo?
above Gandhi. I enjoyed this a lot more. I had a great time
Yeah,
watching this film.
in the
I'm going to
moment,
be
I
honest.
think. Yeah, in the moment, I think it's better. Also, it's not like 3 hours long or whatever.
Yeah, it's only like 2
more
hours
easily
long.
consumable.
Okay, and now versus the 45th spot on the list, Platoon. What do we think about that?
I'm gonna put it above Platoon.
Below. No, obviously.
Below.
I'm kind of happy to have it sit in between Platoon and Gandhi.
Okay. Right on.
We just reviewed Platoon like so long ago. I'm just trying to remember about the themes, because Abram, you did unlock some extra themes to this film that I hadn't really thought about, but I do think are in there and pose
War
some
is
questions.
bad. That's a theme of Platoon.
And
War
the
never
people
changes.
war and the people who fight it are also bad is a theme of or the people who run the fighting, rather.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
We're in
There you have it.
agreement. In between Platoon and Gandhi, so The Life of Emile Zola is going at place number 46 on our great big list of Best Picture winners. I'm pretty dang happy with that outcome, actually.
Yeah.
I was
okay.
surprised,
Good
very pleasantly
placement.
surprised.
Good
you
for
know,
Paul.
Good for Paul. Good for William Dieterle or whatever.
William
Yep,
Dieterle.
yep.
All right.
You know, the quest to Bordereau would reveal that we actually script all these episodes.
Oh, I see.
Incorrect.
Okay.
You'd have to,
Well, we
you'd
do
have to
have a-
convince me to forge that myself by reading me out something.
Mhm.
Make me write it.
We do have one thing that is scripted, and that is the little singy song tune that I sing when we spin the wheel of Rooney. Shall we roll that
That's
into
exactly right, Tanner. It is time. It is time to spin that wheel.
it? Alrighty.
We're sitting at 17 films, boys. It's getting low.
It's getting low.
I know.
Quest's getting real low, big guy.
Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital? Is it on real? Wheel, what's your deal?
And as you can see, Wheel's Deal is
Ooh.
the number 7.
Lucky number
Tucker?
7.
Indeed,
What do
lucky
you
number
got?
7.
What do we
Tucker, what is that?
We're
We
going
got-
to be watching another Best Picture winner, guys.
Oh, what?
God,
Oh.
it's going to be crazy. I know.
My God.
But it's going to be the Best Picture from the year 1983, directed by James L. Brooks and starring Shirley MacLaine, Deborah Winger, Jeff Daniels, John Lithgow, Jack Nicholson, and Danny DeVito. We're going to be watching Terms of Endearment.
Terms of
okay.
Endearment.
I sincerely doubt any of us have seen this film.
I've not seen it. I know
But
nothing
what
about it.
What a cast!
But what a cast!
Really, what a cast.
Truly, Best Picture winning film star Danny DeVito. How you doing, Danny? Nice to see you here.
Is that a Norbit reference there? How you doing?
How you doing?
Let's just be clear.
Yeah,
Let's just get out of the way now.
yeah.
When we're talking about the 1983 Best Picture winner,
Yeah.
means that I'm going to be comparing the film directly.
Oh,
1982's Blade
I
Runner.
see. I
Sure.
see.
Wait, that doesn't. Wait.
No,
Robbed
1980.
for Best Picture.
1980. This movie came out in 1983 or
Yes,
1982.
it did. It came out in 1983.
Okay.
Doesn't make sense because if it's a 1983 Best
Oh,
Picture
okay.
winner,
I
it's a
read the
movie
year.
from
All right, I
1983.
read the
The
year
year
it
of
came
the
out.
movie. It won in 84.
A sham.
A sh-
The whole show.
Well, it
The
did
whole
beat
show's a
Return
sham.
of the Jedi, though.
Yeah, there you go. It did beat Return of the Jedi.
Oh, that's even worse.
I was gonna say that's where I thought you were going. I thought you were going Return of the Jedi. But
That's even worse.
yes.
This
I'm
film
getting
seems
big-
like a
I'm getting
like a
big
film that my
ordinary
parents would
people.
recommend to me. We're
Yeah.
both let's talk over each other more, Tanner.
Yeah, I agree. We both try to go.
Seems like a movie my parents would recommend me. It reminds me of an ordinary people.
There you go. That's a clean one. Thanks, Abram. Oh god, we killed Tucker. Let's wrap up the episode.
Thank you guys for talking about this film with me. I enjoyed watching The Life of Emile Zola and discussing it, and it's all very many different aspects. Hopefully, next episode we can resurrect Tucker so that we can have 4 people on the show to talk about the movie.
He died
but-
from carbon monoxide.
The stove in the corner of
Oh,
Tucker's
no.
19th century bedroom has got a little hole
I
in it.
told him
and
not
he's
to
on-
put that in there.
We will see you all next week to talk about Terms of Endearment and Danny DeVito, I guess. Until then, peace out.
Hold on. John's doing some renovations to the room. First, hold on.
Wait, no funny
Everyone,
picture
hold
for
on,
Abram?
be quiet, and you can hear it.
We're not recording yet.
It's on camera. It's on the official record, but it's not on the video yet. What are you doing?
John's doing some renovations in our room, guys.
Oh, I see. Your headphones. Why don't you put it? Oh, what are you watching?
Watching a show.
But you could put it on Xbox.
Guys.
That's okay.
Me editing the post-credit sequence later.
Is it just HDMI 3?
Hold down. hold down the power button on the
Hey,
Xbox
Abram,
controller.
put your pants on.
Oh man.